What's up, everyone? Welcome into Dodger Heads presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network, the post-Christmas edition. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Daniel Starkin. And in the spirit of being in between Christmas and New Year's, Daniel, we're kind of looking through our Christmas wish list and saying what didn't get bought? What did mom not get us? What did our siblings or kids not purchase yet that still is on the to-do list? And in the Dodgers case, obviously, the heavy lifting has been done. Normally, you get one big present for Christmas in most places. The Dodgers got three: Tyler Glasnow, Shohei Ohtani, and Yoshinobu Yamamoto. But Daniel, as we look at the roster for the Dodgers, it's clear there's still, needs maybe is a strong word when you've done what the Dodgers have, but there's holes here. So when you look, and we're talking starting pitching, we're talking a left-handed bat, we're talking bullpen. For you, from a positional group, where do you see the biggest need for the Dodgers?
Yeah, well, first of all, I am rocking my new swag here, so I just wanted to point that out. But yeah, when talking about what the Dodgers need, I don't think they need much. If we're being honest, like
Yeah.
if they went into the season with the roster they have now, they're still gonna win over 100 games probably. Like you have, in theory, you have between now and like the end of July to make your upgrades, and a lot of times. You want to see, what you have, and then you could address what you need at the deadline. But I don't think the Dodgers are done. I still think there's more moves to be made. And to me, if I had to, identify like what they're probably targeting, I'd say first of all, they probably need one more starting pitcher, like an innings eater. It doesn't need to be a top of the rotation guy by any means, although there's probably some names that we could get into here that are top of the rotation guys that the Dodgers could easily add on the trade market if they want. So I'd say that's one need. I think you need, starting pitching depth is always needed, like no matter how much you think you have. And I know the Dodgers have obviously addressed their rotation by making two of the biggest moves at the offseason so far. But there are still some question marks there, like with health and such. So I do think adding one guy to eat innings would be good. And then I think the other thing is they need left field is still kind of a question mark. Like, is it going to be Michael Busch and Miguel Vargas? Are they going to get a chance out there? I know there was a report that recently came out that we had an article up on that the Dodgers are going to give Michael Busch an opportunity. Me personally, I'll believe it when I see it. Like we heard similar stuff last year, and it never happened. So I think left field is probably the other thing they need to address. And I think the bullpen's pretty set, to be honest. I know they'll add minor league type deals, throw some darts. But I think the two areas are back end of the rotation and left field for me.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I went through this morning and was looking. We'll start with just the lineup. Obviously, at catcher, first base, shortstop, third base, they kind of have everyday guys right now. And, obviously, I'm putting Gavin Lux in that category, but of course, that could be upgraded to Willy Adames type deal. But as it stands, he's not really a platoon type guy. Miguel Rojas isn't a platoon guy. Maybe it's a better way of putting it. Second base, Mookie Betts, presumably the everyday guy. I would pencil in, and I think you agree with me, James Outman should be the everyday center fielder. We don't need to be platooning him, which leaves you right field and left field. Against righties right now, you've got Jason Hayward, who will play against righties, and he's a perfect platoon match with Chris Taylor, who could play against lefties in one of the corner outfield spots. Then you've got Manuel Margot, who will probably platoon against left-handed pitching, which means you've got a corner outfield spot against right-handed pitching. Now, coincidentally enough, a guy you mentioned, Michael Busch, destroys right-handed pitching. You look at his numbers at AAA. He had a 1.153 OPS against righties, hit 25 of his 27 home runs against righties. Obviously, he hits lefties too. Don't worry about that. But primarily, he mashes righties. So could he play left field? Sure. I mean, the more obvious one to me, Daniel, is you can just put Mookie Betts back in right field against right-handed pitching and move Michael Busch to second base, and that sort of solves a lot of your problems here. So that's on the lineup side. Rotation wise, you mentioned it. Do the Dodgers have five guys who could go out and throw pitches for them? They do. Do you feel awesome about all five of those guys and the two or three after them? Maybe not. You've got Glasnow and Yamamoto kind of 1A and 1B. You've got Bobby Miller and Emmett Sheehan probably in the next tier, and then Walker Buehler somewhere in there, but as a question mark. He's coming off of his second Tommy John. How many innings are they going to let him throw? Remains to be seen. Depth pieces, you've got Gavin Stone, Michael Grove, Nick Frasso, Landon Knack, Ryan Yarbrough as well. And then finally, the bullpen. Again, if you run a five-man rotation, you only get 8 bullpen spots. The Dodgers have those spots filled. Evan Phillips, Brusdar Gratterall, Joe Kelly, JP Fireeyes, Caleb Ferguson, kind of your 5 guys that are, I would say, back end. And then you've got Yency Almonte, Blake Trinan, whatever you get from him, and probably Ryan Yarbrough in a sling innings eater role as 8. And you've still got depth. Alex Vesia, Kyle Hurt, Michael Grove, Ricky Vanasco, all depth pieces. So that's kind of the background, which leads me to agree with you, Daniel, that I would say kind of a pitcher. Obviously, I would love it if it's a number 1 or a number 2, but even if it's a number 4 or number 5, a pitcher who can eat innings would be the top of my priority list. And we can talk position players, but I would rather just give Michael Busch a spot, give Miguel Vargas a spot. You have those 2 guys fighting for one roster spot. That's kind of where I would lead. So let's start with pitching. Is there a name out there via trade, free agency, that maybe is somewhere in a combination of a guy you like and a guy you feel like might be gettable?
So I know I just said a couple minutes ago that the Dodgers don't need a top end type guy, but there's a guy out there that is a top end guy that I like a lot, and I think they definitely have the prospects. If they want to go get him, they can. And that's Jesus Luzardo from Miami. Yeah. I've loved that guy since he was a prospect. I think I was covering spring training for DB in like 2019 or 2020, and the Dodgers played the A's, and he was a prospect at the time, and he pitched, and he was just one of the filthiest pitchers I've ever seen, and he's coming off a career year in Miami. And I've talked a lot about how the Dodgers starting rotation is very right-handed heavy, and he would obviously alleviate that. You throw a lefty in the mix, and not just any lefty, like a lefty that's out there sitting 96, 97, touching 98 with dominant stuff, a high strikeout type guy. He's under club control for 3 more years, 3 arbitration years, so pretty cost friendly, I'd say. So it is going to take a lot to get him. You're going to have to put some sort of package together that works for Miami. I would guess that Michael Busch would be part of that package, and that's probably why I'm saying outfield is also a need, because in this scenario, I would be trading Michael Busch and other guys away. But I think if you could add Luzardo to this rotation, then I don't think there's really much of a question of who's the best rotation in baseball. The Dodgers would be absolutely nasty.
Yeah, I saw somewhere, by the way, they do like projections. I believe it was Jaws and kind of who has the most valuable rotation. The Dodgers, as it stands, have the number 1 rotation in baseball, which is crazy because we're all sitting here saying, I'd like them to go get one. Luzardo would be great. It's funny because I thought you were actually going to say Corbin Burns the way you set that one up, but Luzardo makes a ton of sense. And, you know, part of this, too, is for the Dodgers mapping out a timeline for their starting pitching prospects. You want to kind of balance coverage so that you're not forcing a Gavin Stone, a Nick Frasso, a Landon Knack, a River Ryan, who's not even on the 40-man. You're not sort of forcing those guys into the rotation before you need them, while at the same time, you don't want to clog up your rotation for the next 4 or 5 years with a bunch of guys that are going to prevent them from having opportunity. So if you can go get a Luzardo, what it does is it allows you to trade some of those prospects because you've got a guy under club control for 3 more years, and then potentially somebody that you would want to sign long-term beyond that as well. Keeping in mind as well that Shohei Ohtani is going to be a starting pitcher a year from now. Obviously, Walker Buehler's contract situation plays into this. If the Dodgers are planning on extending Walker Buehler, do they have a plan for that? Does that impact things? All of these are sort of factors. The starting pitcher I keep coming back to is Dylan Cease, and it's for a couple of reasons. One is they have a glut of prospects that they can move. Cease seems to be available. I think you would be buying somewhat low. And I think the thing I like most about Cease that maybe doesn't get talked about enough, he just doesn't miss starts. He's made 100 starts, I believe, in the last 3 seasons. And so even if you're getting the guy who pitched last year, who was a massive disappointment compared to a Cy Young type campaign the year before, what Cease gives you is just a guy who's going to go out and take the ball every 5th day, about as sure of a bet as there is from a health perspective. He's got 2 years of team control. So I think that's kind of the right amount where it buys you time for the River Ryan, Nick Frasso types, where they're not going to be ready this year, most likely. Next year, if you could kind of ease them in, Cease is a guy. And then the last one I would say is, if you want to just go free agent wise, depending on what his market is, a guy we've mentioned a lot, Lucas Giolito. Again, innings eater, 4th or 5th starter. He's not going to set the world on fire. He's not nearly as good as the last 2 guys we just mentioned, but he's an option there. So I think those are 3 options that exist. Luzardo, if you want to go crazy. Dylan Cease, if you want to kind of bridge the gap, buy low on somebody and take a chance in the rehab world. And then Giolito, if you don't want to trade anybody, just sign. So let's talk offense, though, real quick. If Michael Busch doesn't get traded, would you still be interested in going out and signing somebody for that sort of hitting against righties, corner outfield / second base spot?
If I'm being honest, no. Like in a scenario where that's if Michael Busch is not traded, like
Yeah.
I think you either got to play him or trade him. It's got to be one or the other. You can't just send him down to AAA where he's going to mash again. You can't have him as a bench bat that's starting once a week. You either got to give him a legit shot or you need to trade him. So to me, if you're trading Michael Busch for one of the names we just mentioned, I'm all for that. And it's not because I dislike Michael Busch. I think me and you are on the same page here. We both like Michael Busch a lot. We're just not sure if the Dodgers like Michael Busch because everything they've done over the past year or so has shown that they don't. So if they were to trade him, I think we'd all be for that. And then you could add another bat on the free agent market or whatever. But if they don't, I would like to see him get every day at bats. Let's see what happens. Like, what's the worst thing that could happen? You put him in the 8 or 9 hole and he's not very good, kind of similar to Miguel Vargas last year. They gave him a runway of more than half a season and he didn't do much and they sent him down and the team still won 100 games. So I think you're going to be okay no matter what if you're the Dodgers. So I'd like to see him play. Let's see what you got in this guy. He's obviously killed it at every minor league level. So why not see what you have or trade him? Those are the two options for me.
No, I totally agree with you on that. Let's go through. I put a Twitter poll out there and said, what would you like? And some people mentioned specific names. Some just mentioned positions. But I went through and sort of tallied the most popular names. And there's one guy who got 8 votes, and we haven't mentioned him yet. Clayton Kershaw. He was the most popular player of what the Dodgers could do. You and I believe, are in alignment, which is hand him a check, say how much does it take, and make this happen. But the beauty of that is it doesn't really have to impact anything else you do this offseason, right?
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, obviously you wouldn't be counting on Clayton Kershaw to come back before the All-Star break, if that even.
Yeah.
So it's basically, Andrew Friedman said at the beginning of the offseason, like, we're going to give him all the time he needs. Like, the offer is there whenever he wants it. Like, I'm sure it's an offer that's fair, that like they're not disrespecting, Clayton by any means by lowballing him or whatever. But also the fact that he's going to miss half a season. It's not like he's getting like a $30 million deal or something like that. So I definitely think that offer is still out there whenever he wants to either accept or decline it. Obviously, he's probably in the process of going through his rehab, seeing how his arm feels, seeing if it's even feasible to pitch in 2024. But yeah, me and you are both in agreement there. Some other people might disagree, but I definitely an open invitation to Kersh, if he wants to come back.
Yeah. The other names that were popular, we had 7 people asking for a closer. You have Emmanuel Clase being a guy that has been mentioned in trade talk. Josh Hader, the top available closer. Like, Clase's got a bunch of years of team control that are really affordable left. He's also young, and he's also an elite relief pitcher. Would you be interested in either of those 2 players? Or if you're the Dodgers and look, obviously they could spend infinite amounts of money and infinite amounts of prospects and just say, it's easy to say, yes, I want all of the best players, but knowing that at some point within reason, the Dodgers are going to have to make decisions. How heavily would you weigh your interest in going out and getting an elite closer?
Yeah, I really don't think the bullpen is a huge concern right now, if we're being honest. Like, that would be a luxury if they go out and get one of those guys. I think Hader is a hard no. Like, first of all, I think, I don't think any reliever is worth $20 million a year. And on top of that, the Dodgers would be giving up even more draft picks to sign him. And they already gave up picks for Ohtani, which that's obviously worth it. But giving up more for Hader, to me, just doesn't really make much sense. And that's not really how the Dodgers have operated in the past. They don't really pay big money for relievers and draft picks. So you could cross Hader off your list, I'd say. Clase is definitely interesting just because the contract is so affordable. Like, you could potentially get him for 5 seasons at like $6 million a year, which is phenomenal. But the problem with that is because of that, like, you're going to have to give up a ton of really good prospects. And I don't think it's worth it for a reliever. I think the Dodgers bullpen is in a really good spot right now. You kind of mentioned the names a few minutes ago, and someone that we haven't mentioned also they just brought back is Daniel Hudson. We'll see if he's healthy. Like, that's kind of a free contract in the sense that he signs a minor league deal. If he's not healthy, no harm, no foul. If he is healthy, then he could be one of your guys as well. So I think the bullpen is fine. I think they'll add lottery tickets as they always do, minor league type deals. And some of those guys will emerge throughout the course of the season. And we see it every year, time and time again. I don't think you need to commit significant resources to relievers. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, Clase is interesting to me. You mentioned the contract. So he's already signed away his arbitration years. He's going to make $13 million over the next 3 seasons and then has two $10 million club options after that. So you're guaranteed 3 years for $4 million and change, and then two really affordable club options. The other piece of this is when you look at that, you're basically signing him through his age 30 season, which is kind of right where you want contracts to begin to stop. And I do think a piece of this is the Dodgers, because they've spent all this money on Otani and Yamamoto, Freeman, Betts, etc. One thing that would be a huge boost to them is being able to supplement that with guys who are very, very good, who are very, very cheap. And so if you can get an elite closer like Clase so under market, I actually think there's a double value there from the perspective of needing to balance your books a little bit. And so, if I'm the Dodgers and the two options in front of you are, hey, we could trade for a Dylan Cease, we could trade for a Jesus Luzardo, or we could sign a Lucas Giolito and then go out and trade for Clase, who's going to be a back end of the bullpen guy for the next 5 years. I could talk myself into that. I'm with you. I'm always nervous about trading a ton of prospects for or signing a lot of money, big money contract of a reliever. But I think Clase might be kind of the exception just because of how young, how cost controlled, and how nasty he is. Briefly, one other name that got 4 votes, Kike Hernandez. We kind of touched on I was a pro Kike Hernandez guy until they acquired Margot. And that's where I said, I just think it's too full. I want Bush or Vargas or both to get some sort of a shot. Where do you land on a Kike Hernandez reunion as it stands today?
Yeah, I'd say I'm pretty much in agreement with you. Like if they were to make a trade for a Clase or one of these starters we talked about, and you have to send out a Bush or Vargas or maybe even both, then obviously more spots open up, and I would love to have Kike back. Obviously, he brings great vibes. The versatility, obviously. A clutch postseason performer in the past we've seen. So if they were able to clear up some roster spots, he'd be on the list of guys I'd want. I know there are other free agents out there, like they've been linked to Teoscar Hernandez, and I would obviously much prefer Teoscar Hernandez to Kike. But if we're not in the scenario where we could hand out what it's going to take to sign a guy like Teoscar, then I think getting a guy like Kike on the cheaper side would be good. But I think right now when you have Bush and Vargas, I'd rather just play them. The production's probably going to be similar, and those guys have more upside, if anything. So I think we're in agreement there.
Last list here. These are guys that kind of just got mentioned offhand. Nolan Arenado, Imanaga, Cease, who I mentioned, Bellinger, Ryu, Arozarena, a Walker Buehler extension, Teoscar Hernandez, our guy Blake, who won't let the Yanni Hernandez fan club die either. But as you go through that list, Arenado, a guy they were linked to in trades at the deadline. Imanaga's a free agent. Bellinger, a free agent. Ryu, if you want that reunion. Arozarena, linked in trades, but seems unlikely. A Walker Buehler extension. Any of those individually jump out at you as something that's intriguing?
Not really, to be honest. Like I think Arenado, I think that ship has pretty much sailed at this point. Like I think the Dodgers have a lot of high money guys. I don't know if they necessarily need to add an Arenado who's not only making a lot of money, but he's also I don't know how big of an upgrade that is from Max Muncy, if we're being honest. Like, would it be enough of an upgrade that to justify the prospects you're giving up? Probably not. So I think we're good there, and I think Imanaga is probably going to be too expensive. I like him as a pitcher. Like, I think if you're slotting him in as your number 4 or 5 starter, then your rotation is really good. But I just think there's too many teams that still need starting pitching out there. So I'd pass there, and I think the Walker Buehler extension is interesting. I don't think either party really wants that right now, though. If I had to guess, like I think if you're Walker Buehler, you probably want to get to free agency where starting pitchers are so coveted, and if you're the Dodgers, there's just too many question marks about his health that I don't know if you want to guarantee him 150 million or whatever it's going to take at this point. So I think that unfortunately we may just have to enjoy Walker Buehler's last season as a Dodger. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer here, but the writing is on the wall, similar to how the writing was on the wall with Corey Seager a few years ago. So it's unfortunate, but I don't think an extension is in the cards there. So as great as all those names were, I just don't see any of that happening.
Yeah, keep in mind Buehler's going to turn 30 years old at some point this season, has already had 2 Tommy Johns, and the Dodgers have Otani, Yamamoto, and Glasnow already booked for next year with Bobby Miller, Emmett Sheehan, and others behind. And so,
and also Dustin May and Gonsolin will be back by the time that 2025 rolls around as well.
It's a great point. So lots of options for the Dodgers. Daniel and I agree that starting pitching would be our next move, and then depending on Michael Busch, if he's still a member of the Dodgers, give him a shot. If he's not, then maybe it's a Kike Hernandez, Teoscar Hernandez type player to go and fill that sort of right-handed hitting option in the corner outfield. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Thanks to all that participated on Twitter and shared your thoughts as well. That is Daniel Stark, and I am Jeff Spiegel. As always, check out DodgerBlue.com, DodgerBlue1958 on social media, and of course, subscribe, ring the notification bell here on YouTube or on Apple, Spotify, and Google if you're listening via podcast. Enjoy the rest of your day, folks, and as always, go Dodgers.